65 men, one longship. The North Sea churns below, cold and endless. The air is thick with salt, sweat, and smoke. For weeks, these men live side by side, eating, sleeping, and fighting in tight quarters. No toilets, no buckets, no sanitation. Only the open sea and the Vikings' endurance. Yet somehow, this crew avoided the sickness that killed 40% of Spanish sailors in the 1500s, 60% of British naval crews during the 1854 cholera outbreak, and decimated every medieval army that tried long voyages. How did they survive the stench, the sickness, and the sea while trapped on a narrow ship built for war, not comfort? Today we're diving into one of history's strangest survival stories, how the Vikings managed waste on their longships without getting sick, and why their solution still teaches us something about design today. Summer 1904, a Norwegian farm, and a discovery that would puzzle archaeologists for the next century. Here's a wild claim I'm about to prove. The Vikings had better sanitation than modern cruise ships. I know that sounds insane. Comment "no way" if you think I'm wrong. I'll wait. Okay, let's see if I can change your mind in the next 15 minutes. While digging through blue clay in Oseberg, Norwegian farmers uncovered a dark shape buried deep in the earth. It was the preserved hull of a Viking ship, protected for 1,000 years by peat that kept it from decay. The excavation took months. Archaeologists cataloged everything. Carved wooden posts depicting snarling beasts, a four-wheeled cart with intact wheels, kitchen vessels, even a wooden bucket with iron bands. The precision was meticulous. The expectations were reasonable. Surely somewhere in this floating household that carried 32 people, there must be evidence of how they managed biological necessities during weeks at sea. They found nothing. No chamber pots, no signs of any area meant to serve as a latrine, no sanitation system at all. Perhaps this was ceremonial, a burial ship never meant for practical voyaging? The Gokstad excavation of 1880 eliminated that theory. A true warship from 890 AD. The wear patterns on the oar ports proved extensive use, yet the pattern held. Nothing for waste management. Across 140 years of Viking ship excavations, one conclusion stands out clearly. Norse shipbuilders deliberately designed their vessels without any permanent sanitation facilities. This wasn't ignorance. It was intentional, and it created both a deadly problem and a brilliant solution. To understand why this matters, we need to see what happened when others tried it differently. HMS Thunderer, British Royal Navy, 1854. The ship carried dedicated sick berths, trained surgeons, and regulations governing hygiene. Sailors slept in designated hammocks, ate from metal mess kits, and defecated in purpose-built heads with waste chutes dropping to the sea. Cholera killed 43 men in 2 weeks. This pattern repeated across centuries. Disease, not enemy fire, claimed more sailors than combat throughout the Age of Sail. British naval records from the Napoleonic Wars show that for every sailor killed in battle, 4 died from disease aboard ship. Vikings faced conditions exponentially worse. The Hygiene longship measured 30 meters long and just 2.7 meters wide. 60 oarsmen worked on that vessel. They rowed in shifts, slept between the benches, ate cold provisions while spray soaked their wool cloaks. When storms hit, they couldn't go below deck. There was no deck below. The mathematics of transmission in such confinement is brutal. One case of cholera in a modern cruise ship spreads to 3 to 5% of passengers, despite modern plumbing. In Viking density, one sick person should infect the entire crew within 72 hours. Yet year after year, Viking fleets sailed, raided, traded, and returned. The answer begins with the ship's most distinctive feature. Now, before we get to the twist ending, I want you to pause and think. If you were designing a modern ship with Viking principles, what would you do differently? No fancy tech allowed, just smart design and social systems. Comment your best idea. I'll heart the most creative ones. A longship's freeboard, the distance from the waterline to the edge of the deck is about half a meter. Stand at the bow, hold onto the stem post, and the ocean is right there within arm's reach. This proximity was intentional. It made everything else possible. The first principle, immediate dispersal. Human waste went straight overboard into the North Atlantic. No containment meant no buildup. No buildup meant germs could not concentrate. The moving saltwater dilutes pathogens instantly, cutting bacterial levels by 99.9% within seconds. Here's the science Vikings never knew they were using. Seawater contains approximately 35 grams of salt per liter. This salinity creates an osmotic pressure that ruptures bacterial cell walls. E. coli bacteria, which causes deadly dysentery, survives less than 24 hours in seawater. Vibrio cholerae, the cholera bacterium, becomes non-viable within hours when diluted in open ocean conditions. The difference between this and later ships is crucial. HMS Victory had designated heads where waste dropped into the sea, but those heads were enclosed spaces. Waste accumulated on wooden platforms. Crew members waited in line. By the time waste reached the ocean, it had already contaminated surfaces, hands, clothing. The Viking system eliminated every step of that process, from body to ocean in seconds. For calm seas, this worked perfectly. In rough weather, simple wooden buckets served as temporary containers, emptied overboard at the first opportunity, never stored, never allowed to fester for more than a few hours. Women traveled these routes as well. The Oseberg burial includes 2 female bodies. Privacy was maintained through social customs, temporary fabric screens, and the crew deliberately looking away. Dignity was negotiated socially, not engineered structurally, yet even perfect. Overboard disposal only addressed immediate waste. The real genius lay in ensuring the ship was never far from solid ground. The Longship's hull draws just 1 meter of water. While Mediterranean galleys required harbor facilities and deep water anchorage, a Viking vessel could beach almost anywhere. Sandy coves, gravel shores, river mouths. The crew simply waited for a favorable tide, rowed hard toward land, and let momentum carry the bow onto shore. 30 seconds later, they stepped off into ankle-deep water. Suddenly, shipboard sanitation becomes a temporary problem, not a permanent condition. Over 200 documented Viking harbor sites stretch from Norway to Newfoundland. These weren't formal ports. Most lacked structures entirely. They were geographic features, protected beaches, freshwater sources, flat ground for overnight camps. A network of reset points averaging 1 every 200 kilometers of coastline. Here's what that means in practice. A Viking ship traveling at typical speeds of 5 to 6 knots could reach the next landing site within 24 to 36 hours. Modern epidemiological studies show that most waterborne diseases require 48 to 72 hours of incubation before symptoms appear. The Vikings were resetting faster than diseases could establish themselves. Every beaching became a sanitation reset. Men dispersed inland to relieve themselves in soil that would absorb waste naturally. Cooking fires, crucial for hot meals and boiling water, were lit on shore. Clothes could be washed in streams, bodies scrubbed with sand and cold water. The ship never had to be a toilet because the ship was never far from land. This strategy came with an environmental cost. Popular sites like Hedeby and Burka suffered concentrated contamination. Archaeological digs show intestinal parasite levels 300 to 400% higher than in rural settlements. In effect, Norse sailors protected crew health by shifting the sanitation problem onto populations on land. But even frequent beaching couldn't eliminate every shipboard health risk. The next layer of protection relied on culture alone. 2 discoveries, separated by 1,000 years, reveal the same truth. A woman's grave in Greenland yields a leather pouch containing a double-sided bone comb, teeth worn smooth from daily use. Analysis reveals wear patterns consistent with habitual maintenance, not occasional vanity but systematic discipline. John of Wallingford's Chronicle, written in 1220 AD, records English complaints about Viking settlers. They combed their hair daily, bathe every Saturday, change their garments often. His grievance wasn't about violence, it was about hygiene making them attractive to English women. The Norse didn't just value cleanliness, they ritualized it. Laugardagr, or washing day, survives in modern Scandinavian languages as Saturday. Every 7th day, Vikings bathed as a matter of cultural tradition. In winter, this required heating precious firewood. During voyages, it meant scrubbing with cold seawater and sand at the first opportunity once they reached shore. The practice wasn't optional. It was scheduled into the week like work or worship. This created a profound epidemiological protection Vikings never intended. Lice and fleas vectored devastating diseases. Rickettsia prowazekii, the bacterium causing epidemic typhus, spreads through lice feces entering scratched skin. Medieval armies regularly lost more soldiers to typhus than to combat. Daily combing physically removed adult lice before they could reproduce. A female louse lays 6 to 9 eggs per day. Remove the adults daily, and you break the reproductive cycle before the population explodes. Weekly bathing disrupted the parasite life cycle even further. Lice eggs, called nits, take 7 to 10 days to hatch. Washing every 7 days catches them right at the threshold before new generations can establish. The ornately carved combs found in Viking graves weren't status symbols. They were survival tools that happened to be beautiful. Every crew member became a node in a distributed defense network. Reputation enforced compliance. Showing up unkempt, smelling rank, lousy. These invited shame powerful enough to modify behavior even in exhausting conditions. Yet Viking protocols weren't epidemiologically perfect. Ibn Fadlan's account describes communal washing rituals where multiple men shared the same bowl of water sequentially. By modern standards, this would spread surface bacteria. The intent was cleanliness. The execution actually facilitated some transmission. But even imperfect hygiene proved more effective than their contemporaries' approaches. And social pressure alone couldn't address one more hidden advantage: freshwater spoils. It's one of maritime history's cruelest ironies. The substance essential for life becomes lethal within weeks of storage. British naval surgeon James Lind documented in 1753 that contaminated drinking water caused more deaths than scurvy, storms, and combat combined. Vikings provisioned differently. Freshwater's weight made it impractical for long voyages. Instead, they carried weak beer and sour milk. The unintended consequence revolutionized shipboard health. Beer production requires boiling the grain water mixture. Sustained boiling at 100 degrees Celsius for 15 to 20 minutes kills virtually all human pathogens. Cholera, typhoid, dysentery. Vikings didn't know why heating prevented spoilage. They just knew it worked. Every barrel of weak beer carried aboard represented gallons of accidentally pasteurized hydration. Sour milk undergoes lactic acid fermentation, dropping pH to 4.5 or lower. At this acidity, most pathogenic bacteria cannot survive. The result: systematic avoidance of contaminated drinking water, the primary killer aboard age-of-sail vessels. The Longship's construction provided another advantage. Those clinker-built overlapping planks were never watertight. Seawater constantly seeped through gaps. Crews spent time scooping bilge water overboard. Any organic debris that fell into the bilge immediately mixed with seawater and got bailed out within hours. No stagnant pools, no anaerobic pockets where bacteria thrive. The Viking hull leaked by design, turning it to their advantage. The constant flow of seawater acted as a natural cleaning system. Here's the irony that history rarely mentions. When Vikings finally settled down and built permanent towns, when they constructed proper houses with enclosed spaces and fixed infrastructure, when they created the kind of civilized sanitation systems that everyone assumed were superior, they started getting sick. Archaeological evidence from Viking-age trading centers like Hedeby and Birka shows something startling. Urban Vikings suffered from significantly higher rates of intestinal parasites than their seafaring ancestors. Roundworm infection rates in settled populations reached 60–70%, compared to an estimated 20–30% among active sailors. The enclosed latrines, the cesspits near living quarters, the accumulation of waste in confined spaces, all the improvements of settled life created concentrated sources of infection that the open ocean had simply washed away. Modern cruise ships face a similar paradox. Despite sophisticated sewage treatment systems, despite advanced HVAC filtration, despite strict hygiene protocols, norovirus outbreaks remain common. The CDC reports 90 to 100 outbreaks per year on cruise ships. Containment creates concentration. Concentration enables transmission. The Vikings had accidentally discovered what modern systems engineering would later formalize. Sometimes the best solution to a problem is to prevent it from becoming a problem in the first place. Their brilliance came from combining three strategies that balanced each other. Architectural minimalism eliminated waste concentration points. Cultural discipline converted individual hygiene into collective defense. Strategic seamanship ensured the ship never became a closed system. No central authority, no bureaucracy, no advanced technology. Problems were prevented through smart design. Social norms guided behavior. Travel patterns turned the landscape itself into part of the solution. The Vikings never eliminated disease. Skeletal remains show evidence of chronic infections and malnutrition, but mass acute outbreaks never systematically collapsed their operations. Crews remained functional, expeditions returned, maritime dominance persisted for 3 centuries. They reached Iceland in 874 AD, Greenland by 985, North America around 1000. 5 centuries before Columbus, Norse sailors stood on the beaches of North America, alive and capable, because they had mastered an ancient truth. Don't manage waste. Disperse it before it accumulates. Don't rely on technology. Build resilience into behavior. Don't create single points of failure. Distribute responsibility across multiple systems. The Vikings didn't conquer the ocean despite their primitive ships. They conquered it because their primitive ships forced them to develop strategies that were more resilient than any technology could provide. So here's my question for you. What modern problem are we trying to fix with technology when we should actually be redesigning the system? Think about it. The Vikings didn't build better toilets. They eliminated the need for toilets altogether. What's your version of that? Drop your thoughts in the comments below.